I've had quite a few of you ask for it, so here it is. A basic guide on how to get Retroarch set up for emulation, and today we're covering specifically PlayStation. So Retroarch is a multi-emulator front end. It basically takes a bunch of different emulators and puts them under one roof and one program to really streamline a lot of the emulation process. I basically use it for anything Gen 6 or below, and it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite emulators. I discovered it a few years ago, and it's just been phenomenal. So today I'm going to show you how to get that downloaded and set up, and how to get all of it set up specifically for PS1 today. In the future, we're going to go into different emulators. Just leave a request in the comment section below to see, telling me which emulators you'd like to see done sooner than others. But let's go ahead and get started. On the PC side of things, we are going to open up our web browser and we're going to do a quick Google search for Retroarch. And it already took me to it because it auto-corrected, but you know, Google, you go to Retroarch. Like I said before, Retroarch is a front end that contains many different types of emulators, but I really enjoy using it for a lot of different systems. Namely basically anything Gen 5 and older. I pretty much exclusively use Retroarch on now. They've added a couple of more recent emulators like Citra, Dolphin, and stuff like that, but I haven't gotten the chance to really put those through their paces. I know that the Dolphin build isn't as good as Dolphin proper, so yeah, there's that. But today's focus is purely on the PlayStation 1 side of things, so I'm getting a little too long-winded here. But anyway, go to download, and we're actually not going to do the stable version. We're going to go straight for the nightly build, so just scroll down past all this stuff until you find the nightly builds. I'm going to have a direct link to this in the description below. This is just if you want to familiarize yourself with the Retroarch website. Now, as you can see, there's a lot of different platforms that Retroarch is on, so we're going to go to Windows, or if you have Linux, and then we're going to download the 64-bit version. And all you need to do is come down here and download this file, the retroarch.7zip. So if you don't have 7zip installed, go download 7zip. It's really like the only file compressor thing you should really be using. And so after this is done downloading and you try to run it and you get an error, it's because you need to install these redistributables. So if you get an error when you try to run Retroarch, just come back to this download page and download this guy right here, and it should take care of you. After you got it downloaded, make sure to, of course, get it extracted. So we'll just extract it to my desktop for today's purposes. I normally make sure that you have this folder exactly where you want it before you run it for the first time, because it defaults all the configuration files to the folder that it's in. Now that it's extracted, just go ahead and open it up, and you'll see that there's a ton of folders, tons of files. So the main executable is, of course, retroarch.exe. Create a shortcut to your desktop if you want, or however you want to set this up. We're just gonna throw that there because reasons, I don't know, why not? Anyway, so we're gonna launch the program. Once again, it configures everything to the folder that it's in, so make sure you have that set up before you start. Now that we're in Retroarch, you can either use your mouse or keyboard, or a controller. The Retroarch does work with Xbox One, 360, PS4, PS3 controllers out of the door. So if you have a controller hooked up, it's very easy just to navigate the menu. One of the first things I always like to do is change it to full screen. I like having it in full screen because it looks nice. Look at that, it's all full screen and it's all pretty. Let's go. After that, we're gonna need to download our PlayStation Core. So go to Online Updater, Core Updater. You can see that there's a ton of systems here, and we're gonna cover most of these systems in the coming weeks. Today we are focusing solely on PlayStation. So scroll down to the Sony section, and you'll see that there are a couple of different PlayStation cores. So my favorite to use is the Beetle PSX core. It's pretty dang accurate, and I really like it. I mean, most PlayStation emulators are pretty accurate these days, but this one is just my favorite. for today's video, we're going to do Beetle PSX. So just go ahead and select it, it'll download it, and there you go. Now that you got your core downloaded, one of the first things I always like to do is to come over here and click on the user interface button and tell it to run in the background, because if you happen to click out of Retroarch, it will pause it. So if you're trying to record any gameplay footage from this emulator and you end up clicking out of it, it just completely kills the emulator's gameplay. So highly recommend disabling that. And then of course you want to go over to configurations and save the current config file. There is a little bit of setup we need to do, and that is to get a PS1 BIOS into our system folder. So if you remember from the last video, I showed you guys how to legally dump your PS1 BIOS, and there's my BIOS. You can try to find them on the internet. It's not technically legal to do so. Dumping them for your own console is technically the only legal way to obtain this, but you know, if you have good Google skills, yeah. Anyway, so going back to the Retroarch website, go to their documentation. You're going to be able to see exactly how to get things set up. So if you go to core documentations, you go down to Sony core, and then you select which core you're using. So in this case, we're using Beetle. It's going to show you exactly what you need to name your BIOS file after you acquire it. So name your BIOS file, and after you've done that, just go ahead and drop it into your system folder. Alright, now that we've got the BIOS in the system folder, it's time to get our games ready. So also in a previous video, I showed you how to rip your own PS1 games for use on an emulator. And hey, look what it is. It's our old friend Tony Hawk 2 right here. If you haven't played this game yet, you really should step on that. Anyway, so when you first rip your PS2, yeah, anyway. PS1 games, when you rip your PS1 games, you get a bin.q file, and this is perfectly usable. Beetle PSX and Retroarch reads your Q files, and will play your game. Easy, no problem whatsoever. But there actually is a slightly better format for this, especially if you have multi-disc games like Final Fantasy VII. There is a program called Psx-Psp that was released quite a while ago, because when Sony started releasing PS1 games on their official emulator for PSP, they actually changed the container format, and we can apply that to our own backups to make them easier to use, because instead of having 6 files for like all of Final Fantasy, we can have a single file and allow us to easily change discs from the Retroarch menu without any issues. So I highly recommend grabbing Psx-Psp. I'll put a link in the description below for you, but this is very easy to use. You just open it up, run the program, and as you can see, it's all PSP oriented, but basically we're going to open the convert menu, and we're going to select Tony Hawk. And we're going to have it output it to, I'm going to move it back to my desktop for this one. There we go. And as you can see, it's able to tell what game it is just from the title ID. And just go ahead and hit convert. Takes a couple seconds. And there we are. So the other thing that is great about doing this is it actually compresses the disk image too, so it takes up less size on your hard drive. So if you have a ton of PS1 games, you're actually able to get back quite a bit of space from using this option. So as you can see, the original image was about 714 megabytes. Let's go ahead and take a look at what that is now. Now it is about 494, almost 500. So we saved practically 200 megabytes of hard drive space. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but say you have a collection of about 100 PS1 games, that's quite a hefty chunk of change of hard drive space that you're saving there. So as you can see, it outputs it into this eboot.pvp. So I'm just going to rename that to Tony Hawk 2. There we go. And it did make a folder for me. I'm going to go ahead and move Tony Hawk over to my D drive just to make it easier to get to, less folder navigation we're gonna have to do in a minute here. So open up Retroarch, select load core, select Beetle, load content. Then we'll just go to that folder that we just selected, and there we go. But yes, as you can see, Tony Hawk 2 is running just absolutely perfectly. Got my controller plugged in, and we're ready to go. So, for most of you, you might just be done here, and that's totally cool. There's a lot more we can really do to make this experience really shine, though, and I'm going to show you what that is here. Alright, so I wanted to get loaded into the level first before we did this, so press F1 on your keyboard to bring up the Retroarch menu. If you want to, you can actually configure a button combo for this as well. I highly recommend this. I like to use clicking down on both thumbsticks. I haven't run across a single game where you click down on both thumbsticks, so at the same time at least, so it's been a great shortcut, so that way you can just click both thumbsticks to get back to this menu. Now that we're in the Retroarch menu, you can actually scroll down to our 4 options here. So if you go down to options, you can see that there is quite a few different things we can do here. So I like to run my PS1 games at native resolution. It's just a personal preference, but you can actually crank this sucker up quite a bit. So say you want to run your PS1 games at 4 times resolution, you get those nice crisp emulator provided graphics. Check it out. So one of the things about upscaling is it does present graphical artifacts in a lot of the games. That's why you see this garbage around the text. But once you're in the game itself, you can see that it just looks a heck of a lot better. And then there's also widescreen hacks. And then you can even overclock the emulated PS1. And if you don't like that PS1 BIOS, you can go ahead and skip that too by ticking this option. That way it just loads straight into your games. I like having it on just for my own sense of nostalgia. I like when I emulate anything other than GameCube, I just like it to be as 100% accurate as I can. And I don't know, it's just a personal preference, and I really like the way it looks. So, as you can see, here is Tony Hawk 2 running in widescreen, which this game did not support. One of the things about most widescreen hacks, these games were not meant to display images outside of a 4x3 frame, so you will see quite a bit of texture drop out and cropping and item cropping. So, I typically don't tend to use any widescreen hacks myself. One of the last options you're going to find in this menu is to increase CD load times. So this is pretty cool. You can actually make it so the PlayStation thinks that it's running from a CD drive much faster than its original 2 times drive speed. So even doubling it up to 4 times is going to give you much quicker load times. But this can produce errors in certain games, so I just leave it at native for compatibility's sake. So go ahead and experiment with that if you're feeling like you want to. So one of the last things I want to show you that you can do that's really awesome with Retroarch, it's available in most emulators, but it's a lot easier on Retroarch in my opinion, but you can actually apply shaders. There's tons of shader presets here, so we can make this look like an old school CRT. I like to use the CRT Easy mode. It's very reminiscent of what my Trinitron looks like here in the background that you've seen in my videos. And when you load that and you apply it, it's all of a sudden it looks like we're running this on a CRT TV, and it looks really good. And most people will ask why you would even want to have like scan lines or any of that in an emulator. Well, honestly, a lot of old games use scan lines to hide imperfections and other rendering tricks. Say you needed a black line on something, instead of rendering a pixel there, just use the black scan line. And it's actually really famous in a lot of older Sega games, if I remember correctly. It looks really, really nice, and I really love this. And you can even go ahead and test out combinations of different things if you want to. I just use easy mode because it's very perfect for what I want to do, and it's just great. Anyway, after you have your shaders and your screen looking exactly how you want it, go back down into your shaders options and tell it to save it as your core preset. So that way, every time you load up this core, this is exactly what you're gonna see. So now that we've messed around with gameplay and our shaders, I want to show you guys how to do a 2-disc game here, because this is very important. So I went ahead and loaded up my copy of Command & Conquer. One disc was the GDI campaign, the other disc was the NOD campaign, so it should automatically be loading into disc 1 right now, as we can see here.
To play the Brotherhood of Nod missions, please insert the Nod disc.
There we go. So this is the GDI disc, but say you want to play the Nod missions, so you just go ahead and go into your Retroarch menu, and there is an option here called Disk Control. So go ahead and press A on that, press Disk Cycle Tray Status, click on that one first, then you can go ahead and change your disk, and then you can go ahead and close it again, and you can see on the bottom it says close the virtual disk tray, opened it, closed it, and then we can go back up here and restart the game. And when it restarts, we should now be loaded into disc 2. And there it is, now we're playing disc 2. So for those of you that love your JRPGs like Final Fantasy, Chrono Cross, anything like that, you're able to easily change the game's disc when you get to a disc screen. Another thing to note about PS1 emulation is that the PS1 did not originally launch with a controller that had analog thumbsticks, so there are games that will take advantage of analog thumbsticks, some that won't. And in other emulators, it's usually activated by pressing a button on your keyboard. In Retroarch, you can just go into your menu, and you are able to go down to controls, and you can tell it which type of PlayStation controller you're using. So we're going to go ahead and switch it up to DualShock. Now when we go back into Tony Hawk, we should be able to use our thumbstick to continue playing the game. Fair enough. Once you have everything set up exactly how you want it, go down in your Retroarch menu to the Save Core Overrides. This way, whenever the Beetle PSX core is loaded, it will load up this configuration file. Everything will look exactly how you want it in the future. And there you have it, a fully set up, fully functional PS1 emulator. Everything is able to be done directly through a controller, so if you're trying to build, say, a emulation computer that you're just going to have hooked up to your TV, Retroarch really is such a great run-in to allow for that over other standalone emulators, because you once again are able to do everything with a controller. So thank you all so much for watching this tutorial, basic brief tutorial on how to get a PS1 emulator set up within Retroarch. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit that sub button for more videos like this in the future, as well as other comparisons, reviews, walkthroughs, just whatever I happen to make at the time. And again, if you want to see anything done on this channel, always leave a request in the comments section. I can't tell you guys enough how much I love doing projects that I know you guys all have questions on. So if you have anything you'd like to see done, just leave it in the comments below as well. And once again, thank you for watching this video. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you back next time.